or it's going to challenge. This is actually what it is, probably a challenge to what your thoughts are already. So ancient peoples had many different ideas about what God's, the divine, is like, and this will be a challenge. Maybe we'll talk about that later. But what you have to realize is that God is not interested in answering all of our questions at this moment that we have around Genesis. He has some specific things he wants to tell us, and so therefore that's why it's written the way that it is. And the other thing is that if you try to write, if we tried to write our modern story of creation, and then you handed it to somebody who lived several thousand years ago or more, even if they could read English, they wouldn't understand what you meant. Because they didn't have the. It's not they weren't dumb, that they were dumb, because they're not. They just didn't have. They didn't have the building blocks to understand where we are. They didn't have the language. It's in a way, it's kind of like when you're a child. When you ask that question, where do babies come from? Your parents start talking about body parts. The sperm, it swims up inside. No, no, you don't really do that, do you? Because the child not only intellectually doesn't have the capacity, doesn't have the experience or the building blocks to know any of that stuff. So what do you say? Comes from the stork. Don't know if that's helpful. Or my friends Alan and AJ, that their explanation is, well, a baby comes when a mommy and a daddy share a special hug. Okay, I've seen mommy and daddy hug. Okay, is that true? It kind of conveys something, doesn't it? Something that's true, but it's not really. I mean, and if you said that to a somebody who's 35 and was asking, where do babies come from? Because I just have been living by myself on a desert island for my whole life. Well, it's funny, mommy and daddy have a special hug. Oh, cool. That. Anyway, you understand what I'm saying. This is why sometimes we have this arrogance about the things of the past. 100 years ago they were really stupid, but we're a lot smarter now. We know more. Well, actually, maybe not. Maybe not. Everything that we know, we've been told, and it's been built on what they did, what other people did, over hundreds and hundreds of years before. You come with a new idea that comes from the step before, and you get that in your brain and you wrestle it around until, oh, okay, I see how that works. But it's tough to jump 5 steps ahead, or 10 or 20. So this literature totally fits in its time. It doesn't make it stupid or irrelevant. In fact, it makes it much more irrelevant. It has a lot of things to say that we need to hear. So all of that just to say that just because it's old and it doesn't fit with how we would write it in our scientific way, it doesn't mean it doesn't matter, or that it's not important, or that it's somehow less intelligent, because it's definitely not. Okay? Pretty good? We're going to go on a fast ride here, I think. Kev, did you get it?
Yes.
Having trouble? Okay, good. Let's talk about one more thing before we move on to human beings, which is the structure. Some of you notice the structure. There's 2 different kinds of structure here. And Kevin will eventually get this up, I'm sure of it, because he's the man of power. But the reason that you said it sounded like poetry, that it was ordered, is because it is. It's highly structured. So you have in every day, you have this, there's one pattern. So there's an announcement, God said, Then there's a command, let there be. Then there's this report, and it was so. Then there's an evaluation. God saw it was good. And then there's this time framework, a temporal framework, which is evening and morning, day, something. And every day goes through that. So what you realize in this is that, somebody didn't just slap this down on a piece of paper. Or, on a piece of papyrus. Or chiseling in a stone. Oh, God's giving me revelation. I gotta... no. This is artistry. This is partly why it feels somewhat poetic. And let me just read this quote. The first read of Genesis 1 convinces the reader that it's art. Of all the ways to portray the creation of the Word, the author chooses this way. The words hum, the sentences betray a rhythm that are like the ribs of a great boat, like the joists, the rafters of a house as you step across them. They build toward a pinnacle, the words don't rhyme, but you cannot help but feel you are held by some kind of poetry, by the steady beat of waves on the shore. There's this kind of over and over and over and over and over again. And there's also a second pattern, which some of you've heard about, know about, and I'll just write it here. But basically, the first 3 days have to do with the environment that God creates. So what's day 1? What is it? Heavens and earth? Isn't it light and darkness? Okay. Day 2. Okay. Day 3. Land and sea. And then the vegetation. Vegetation. Day 4. What's day 4? Sun and moon. The stars. 5. Okay, yeah. Creatures that are in the heavens and the earth. So fish and birds, boids, which are the things that exist here, right? By the way, heaven, sky, same word. And what happens in day 3? You have humans. That's where we get our word for hummus. Okay, and what else? Critters. Okay, so everything else that creeps, crawls, squawks, barks. There it is. Okay, so you see how it looks like the environment, and these are the things that inhabit the environment. That's pretty structured, isn't it? It's pretty intentional. And day 7, we're just going to take a little siesta. We're going to take a little rest. And so the whole thing about this portrayal of how the world is made has this structure, this order to it that's poetic and artistic and ordered. Does that matter?
Yeah.
Why does it matter? Okay, it's purpose. It's not accident. Okay, so let's get that one out of our head. This is not an accident. None of this is an accident. What else?
It reveals God's nature.
Okay, it reveals God's nature. It's true. Anybody want to expand on that? Anybody live? No, I don't want you to put your hand up. But if you've ever lived in a house that is chaotic. You never know what mood your parents are going to be in, if you're going to get beaten or if you're going to get an ice cream. They're going to be drunk or sober. If you grow up in chaos, well, there's no safety in chaos. And in fact, you carry the chaos around in you. If you grow up in order, in peacefulness, you carry that with you as well, don't you? What kind of world do we live in? Okay, chaos. That's not quite true. But I understand what you're saying. But you have to wait until chapter 3 to deal with that.
We live in a world that's structured, but it's only the way we perceive it and the way we make the chaos ourselves.
Okay, chaos has a lot to do with us, doesn't it? That's right. So in general, what being communicated is, look, is it Coldplay? We all live in a beautiful world. Notice the English accent there. Okay, this world it's the place where we meet God. I don't want to say forget third heaven experiences, but this is the place where we meet God. And God is He's like this. We know what He's going to be like. He's not going to be capricious. We don't know. Capricious is, well, He has these whims, and whatever His whim is, that's how He is. Could be good one day, could be bad the next. Today, He might decide to punish us just because. Oh man, this really matters. Not only because it's portraying the world, but it's portraying who God is. God is, man, you can count on Him. He's looking out for you. This world, when you get out of bed in the morning, at least as far as it's concerning Him, it's good. It's ordered. Thank you, Kevin. You're the man. So if you have no concept of God and you come to these pages, now we've had lots, obviously, most of us, because we've grown up, some of us have grown up in church, others of us have spent a long time figuring out who God is and reading and having people speak to us. But if you go right back to the beginning, God is dependable. God is, I won't say He's totally ordered, but He's safe, stable for us. And everything that He's created is for us, and we're for it as well. So it actually matters. It actually matters. And this is the portrayal of God that you get from the beginning. And if you put this into, maybe if I have time, I'll show you some slides. But if you put this into its background, in its background in the ancient Near East, well, first of all, the whole creation has gods everywhere. And when you have the Tiamat and Leviathan, who are kind of chaos creatures, you don't know if the world is going to be overthrown or not. And this is definitely saying, no, this is not the nature of the world. It's just me. In the other ones, the stars are gods, aren't they? Here, and the stars, I made those. It's like a cast-off. There's no divine things here. There's no dissension. There's no fighting like there is in some of the ancient Near Eastern texts. It's just God. I'm making this, and I'm making that, and it's really good. And it's for you. It's kind of cool. Really cool. God is dependable. God is ordered. God is not a tame lion, but He is safe. All right, let's talk about human beings for a bit. What's it say about human beings? What does that mean? What's that? That we look like him? Let me just erase this here. Says it twice, doesn't it? Doesn't it say it twice? Yeah, it says it twice in like 2 chapters. It talks about human beings like this. By the way, that's a like ding ding ding. Pay attention. I'm repeating myself. It's like underlining. Okay, so we're made in the image, the likeness of God. And I'm pretty sure that there's a repetition just for fun, because this is important. Okay, so what did you say? What does this mean?
That we are created and that we look like it.
Okay, we look like him.
That I was the outside. And inside we
Okay, say that again. On the outside or on the inside? Okay, on the outside? Okay, any other ideas of what this means?
We've got personality.
Personality. Okay. Do our cats have personality? Who knows? We think they do. What else?
We have God's nature, He puts His nature in us.
Okay. Okay, nature. What else? Come forth with your brilliantness. 3 in 1. Okay. Body, soul, and spirit. Okay. That's Augustine's argument. It's good. Emotional beings. Okay. Okay. Creative. We have that capability. Good. Laura, did you have a spirit? Okay. Anyone else?
That our essence is love, actually.
Okay. Essence is love.
Created to reign.
Created to reign. Okay. Okay, Kev. Kevin's gone. He's there. Okay, do you want to go through to that slide? There's all sorts of explanations for what does this mean. Partly because it doesn't really explain itself, does it? Just kind of lays it out there. Keep going, next one. And there'll be a couple more. By the way, there's 4 or 5 different words used for create. There's created, there's made, there's formed, which is what he does when he makes human beings, by the way. Sort of gets down there and mucks around, sort of hands-on. Next slide. And the next one. You're going to like this one. This is... Oh, I'm sorry. I should have covered up. Sorry about that. Yeah.
But I think chapter on 6 we created humans, but it doesn't talk about Adam or Eve until the 2nd chapter.
That's right. Yeah. Okay, so just let me summarize what you're saying. He doesn't talk about Adam and Eve until later. Yeah.
Yeah. So does that mean that he made Adam and Eve during the 6th day, or did he just make like some kind of blueprint?
Did he make them during the 6th day or make a blueprint? Probably this is the overview chapter. This is what is normally said. Chapter 1 is kind of the overview, and then you get down to some nitty-gritty as you move on into chapter 2 and 3, etc.
Then it goes with that he created the blueprints and stuff, and then Adam started the 6th day, those animals being created. So if you look at way later, because he was naming all the animals, then he was thinking like, I am male.
Yeah. So everything else is created before human beings, and but the animals are already created. They're just named in chapter 2 later. Adam names them, but they're already created.
Yeah, but was evil there as well? Because he saw Christianity
Yeah.
too, that he was not.
Again, you've got an expansion. So what looks like in Genesis 1, 26 and 27, looks like, okay, here we're creating human beings, male and female. Again, it's just kind of a statement, an overview, and then you unpack that a little bit later. You unpack that in chapter 2. So you have the man created first. He does the naming, but there's nobody to hang out with him. And so we'll create... That's how you create a woman, by the way. From a rib. Didn't you know that? Never mind. So that's what happens there. It's kind of an expansion, I would say. Okay, we've kind of looked over the vista. Now let's actually look down and see how this happened. It's a much more close-up look. Did we get there? Great. Okay, so here are some of the regular ideas about what does this mean. One of them is the capacity for relationship with God and others. And possibly you could pick that up from verse 27, created them male and female. Certainly, whether this is what it means or not, we have that capacity. And we're built that way. That we have some intellectual or rational abilities. This was more popular probably in the 1800s, early 1900s, just because we're really quite taken with our own mental abilities. An emotional or spiritual capacity, which is different from the animals. It's possible. A similar upright form as God. You can look at if you look at some of the theophanies where God arrives, he often kind of looks like a human being. That's the argument there. The last three, I think, are probably more likely. That it just says we're like God. And it doesn't really tell you what that is. And I'll explain this in a minute. And then that we represent God, an image represents something, but also that we're not God. So you can click over to the next slide. Just leave that there. Okay, so the first one that I want to talk about here is that we're meant to represent God before the creation. In their context, what was an image? Well, you had images of gods or kings, and you had them in a certain part of the realm, and they were meant to represent that being, the god or the king. And furthermore, king was also sometimes called the image of whatever god it was. Okay, so in a sense, they were meant to represent the being behind them. So in this sense, our identity is caught up in being able to represent God. Does that make sense? No, I didn't understand what you said. So in other words, wherever you go, all of creation says, there's a God. We represent God. Sometimes we don't do it very well, do we? Yeah. But the fact that you're here is a pointer. Okay, so we can choose to just be a pointer, but live at odds with that, or we can choose to live in line with that. So we're not only, people not only look at us and say, there's a God, but they look at us and they say, I know what God's like. Okay, so the idea that we represent God. The second thing being that we are not God. We're not God. That's obvious, isn't it? An image isn't the thing itself, is it? If you see the Mona Lisa, well, it's not really Mona Lisa. It's just a painting of her. Right? So, this is a way of saying, and there's more to this than I won't talk about in a second, but a way of saying that Though we're special, we're not God. We have limits, we have boundaries. So what does that mean? Does that matter?
I'll discuss it with you.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, so if one of the implications of being the image of God is that we're not God, what does that mean? How does that work out for us? Does that matter?
Doesn't that make us dependent on him?
Makes us dependent upon Him? Yeah.
There's always more to God. There's always more to find out. We represent God and we point others to God.
Okay.
They don't find God in us.
Okay.
That's the starting point, and then there's so much more.
Okay. Good. Yeah. So you've combined those two things about not being God and representing God. If people see, if they look at us, they see it's only the starting point for looking to God, but we are a pointer to Him. It's good. Good. Hadn't thought of that. So when you want to, trying to think of something. I was going to say when you break curfew, but maybe that's not the best thing to use. When you, when you decide, you know what? I'm going to go home. I'm going to go to Montreal tonight, and I'm going to do 150 miles an hour in my car. Can you do that? Not in my car. Should you do that? Do you have the right to do that? Probably not. Anyway, the point is that sometimes we act like we are God, don't we, as human beings? I can do what I want. If I can get away with it, I can do what I want. This is a reminder that we're not. We don't have full autonomy. We're never meant to have full independence. We can't. I love people fall down before Paul, and he's like, "Oh, get up!" Don't be praying to me or bowing down to me. I'm not God. It's a reminder that we're under someone, that we're not the thing itself. We can't do just what we want. It'd be a good lesson for a lot of us to learn, wouldn't it? Of course, y'all are here because you've already learned this lesson. Right? Yes, the answer is yes. Turn to the person next to you and say, yes, I've learned this lesson. I'm lying a little bit, but I've learned this lesson. The other part of it is that you don't have to be God. The other flip side of not being God is that you don't have to be God. Do you realize that? You don't have to be God. You don't have to be infallible. You can actually make mistakes. Oh, it goes to performance issues, doesn't it? Nobody in here has performance issues, but yeah, you can just lighten up. Lighten up. Okay, I will. Because you don't have to be God. You don't have to be infallible. You don't have to live a life where everything is correct and you've got to get it right. It's never expected that you would get everything right. Because you're not God. And hopefully, somewhere in the middle, life works out pretty well for us. Because actually God is the one who covers us. The third important implication is that this communicates value. In my my mind, this is kind of like the Old Testament version of, "You are my son whom I love, and with you I'm well pleased." I mean, think about it. There's nothing else in creation that's called the image of God. You are the image of God. Each one of you is the image of God. And so there's this significance, this value that you have. Sometimes, you look in the mirror and you think, "Oh man, what a loser I am sometimes. Too fat, too short, too tall, too wrong hair color. My eyes aren't equal. My nose is crooked. I wish I was Britney Spears." I don't. But some of you might think that. You guys just had identity, right? This last week?
Yeah.
Was that good? He's a great teacher. And this is part of that package. Who am I? This is the big question, isn't it? Here are the big questions that Genesis tries to answer. Where am I? Well, we're in God's good earth. We're not in a shack. No, I don't mean the shack. I mean, we're not in some, lean-to somewhere. And it's not like, here, take your slop. There's some gruel for you today. Loser. No, we're not there. We're in God's good earth, which He made for us. And it's beautiful, and it's full of artistry and poetry and goodness. And the goodness is for us. We're not sitting down to slop. We're sitting down to, a 20-course meal at the banquet table. That's where we are. Here's the big one. Who am I? Well, I'm Gordon Harris. Yeah, and so what? Who is that? Well, I'm from Barrie. Yeah, so what? Well, my parents are Jim and Mary. Yeah, and what? Who am I? Do I matter? Am I a piece of protoplasm that's just grown up into some other kind of blob? No, you are the image of God. Okay, that's a whole different message. I want you to say that to yourself. I am made in God's image. Nothing can take that away from me. And it's true. Nothing can take that away from you. Even after sin comes, and as we read it in chapter 3, human beings are still the image of God, still made in His image. Sin doesn't change that. Sin might have some effects on our life, but it doesn't change who we are. It doesn't change our value. I wish that I had a good image to convey what that means. You're important. You're more important than you can ever think. Except if you think you're God.
Okay,
Yeah.
on one sense, though, we're made in the image of God, but we don't truly understand. Some people think we look like Him, some people think He's the soul.
Yeah.
It'd be like saying, "You look like my friend,"
Mm-hmm.
and my friend looks like this. It means nothing to you. That means nothing that I say you're made like this.
Yeah.
Or you look like Him.
Yeah.
That would be on the same sense.
I think the comparison is between us and God, as opposed to, I don't know if that's quite answering what you're saying.
I'll make a note to ask you.
Okay. So if God is like the ultimate, and we're made in His image, that conveys a significance, value. Who am I? Destiny. Not so much destiny, but identity. Who am I? I mean, actually, it's here, isn't it? Yeah, Psalm 8. So the psalmist is writing this, and he's talking about the same passage actually. But he says, when I look around, when I see the universe, when I see the stars and the moon, etc., which you made, I mean, you got your little fingers in there, and you made those things. And you've set them in place. What is a human being that you think about him? I mean, we seem so small. And that you care for us. But you made us a little lower than you. Well, some of your versions will have than the angels, but that's actually reading backwards. In Hebrew, it actually says we're made a little lower than God. And you've crowned us with glory and honor. See, this is part of the reason why this story matters. If we go to the evolutionary story, what does it say about human beings? Okay, we're random. We're what? We're accidents. What's that?
Sorry.
Okay, came from monkeys. What else?
It says like we're not important.
Yeah, it doesn't really tell us anything about our importance, does it?
This is part of the great turmoil of the universe.
It's just part of what, yeah, it's part of the great turmoil of the universe. It's just what the universe has thrown up. This story is telling us about ourselves. Who am I? Do I matter? Yeah, you really matter. You really matter. It's important to hold on to this because it's one of the big questions, isn't it? You can go to the next slide if you want. This is probably used a lot about human beings and probably taken a bit out of context, but I'll use it anyway. Shakespeare talks about this. What a piece of work is man, how noble in reason, how infinite in faculties, in form and moving, how express and admirable, in action, how like an angel, in apprehension, how like a god. The beauty of the world, the paragon of animals, and yet to me, what is this quintessence of dust? That kind of holds the two things in tension, doesn't it? You know what? Yeah, we're pretty frail. We are made from dust, as God says. On the other hand, there is so much that's amazing about us and so much value that we have with God. Not the way that we depict value on someone else is, what can they do for us? How important are they in the world? Do they have money, beauty? All of those kinds of things. Can they perform? Are they funny? That's how we sort of, I'm not saying we should, but that's often how we do it. We kind of put value labels on. Sort of like The Price is Right. How much is this bottle of water worth? And if you get it right, you can open door number 3. But actually, our value is not based in those things. Our value is based in the fact that we are made in God's image. And He's the ultimate one that puts value on who we are. So we need to hold on to that. Let's talk a little bit about our destiny. One of you said ruling had to do with our, probably not quite, although it is close. Ruling has to do with our destiny, with our purpose, as opposed to our identity. They're somewhat intertwined, but not exactly the same thing. What is human purpose? What's that? Relationship? What's the text say? Oh, here we go. Here we go. You don't even have to answer. Okay, your job is to have a zoo. What does it say? What are we supposed to do? Be fruitful, but not in school. Not yet. Okay, we're supposed to rule, aren't we?
Yeah.
We're supposed to rule, and I don't know if you would make this thought. So there is some thought that this refers to kind of like domination and of the created order and abuse and all that stuff. But that's not at all how you would think of rule in the ancient world. At least not in Hebrew ancient world. It's all rule under God, which is beneficial. Another way of saying it is stewardship. Okay, what comes into your hands, and into your sphere, you steward that. You take it, you make it better, you make it orderly, you make it productive. So, what you've got, don't just ignore it. Make it everything it's supposed to be. Now, the reason that you have be fruitful and multiply is if you think about creation starting in how do I say this? One man and one woman cannot rule over the whole world, can they? It's a little tough. I have trouble in my own house, let alone the whole world. So it's going to need a whole bunch of us. So be fruitful, multiply, fill it, and rule over it. It needs a race. It needs human beings to rule and to make the world everything it's supposed to be. This is fascinating. You'll want to write all this down. Okay, you ready? I think it's fascinating. Maybe you don't. In chapter 2. Verse 2, it says, by the seventh day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the seventh day, he rested from all his work. And God blessed the seventh day and made it holy because on it he rested from all the work of creating he had done. What do you notice? Repetition. Yeah, a little poetry going on almost. What's being repeated? Rest. Okay. Rest. What else? What's that? Okay, he created everything. What else?
He rested from his work.
Yes! He rested from his work. Zara. Nice. Okay, here's this work. This word is used almost always. I'll say always, okay? I'll just overstate it a bit. It's always used for human work. And so God is stopping his work and he's giving human beings rule. And the implication is that though God says this is all very good, it's not finished. That what he intends for the world is not done. And that the divine work that he has begun is now picked up by us. In other words, what God gives you, what God gives into your hands, into your sphere, into your life, is not just a job or a hobby or a talent. It's part of God's, his divine work that he intends to carry out. It's not like God stopped in day 6 and is like, okay, let's see how the world spins out now. Let's watch it. It's not like he, okay, I've got my TV set and there it is on the wall. Good, okay, let's kick back now and watch for a couple thousand years and see what's going on. No, it's much more like, okay, I've built the car. I've been watching Fast and Furious with my son, Dom Toretto. Anybody like Vin Diesel? Come on. No, nobody wants it. Anyway, forget it. So it's sort of like, God creates this thing, and then he says, okay, son, daughter, paint it, fix it, clean it, do your thing. You can use it. So this is important for us, isn't it? Because a lot of us think that our life is kind of like, well, I'm going to work at the 7-Eleven. And that's just like, man, it's the only job I could get. Stinky. Don't like it. Slurpees all day. Bit of a bummer. But actually, it's part of God's work. Don't ask me how that works. I just know that it is. Whatever comes into your hand is part of the divine process of working out in the world. Creating the world, in a sense, the way God intended it to be. Any of you ever feel... Oh no, let me think of another way of saying this. Work's important for us. We're built to work. So even if you had, let's say you had $1 million. Come on. Okay, if you had $1 million. Well, maybe that's not that much today, but let's say you had $1 billion. And you could just lie around all day on your private resort, at the pool, sipping mojitos. Would that be right? Would that be what God wants for your life? No. Of course not. Of course, if you do have the pool and the mojitos, you have to make use of those. But no, just kidding. What God gives you, you steward that. You make use of that. Okay, so what is it that God's given into your hands right now?
Yeah, and everything on it.
What's that?
Yeah, and everything on it.
Earth and everything on it.
Say again.
Oh, wow.
Come on, third time. What's the charm?
Yeah, and everything on it.
Okay, the earth and everything on it. More specific. What has He given you specifically here and now?
General assignments.
Okay, abilities? Would you say journaling? Okay, journaling. He's giving you journaling. What else? Curfew. Okay.
Chicken and rice.
Okay, more concrete. Come on, concrete. What's that? Music? Okay. Families. Okay. And so what do you want to do with that? What are you supposed to do with it? Build relationship? What else? What else is in your hands right now? School of ministry. Yes. Lucky. What are you going to do with that? Build character? Take it to the world? Yeah?
Give it away.
Give it away to Toronto and the world. That's good. The vision statement. Okay. Yeah, what else? It's hard to think of this, isn't it? Because you're kind of here now. But what else? Think about your life before you came to school. What did God give to you? What did you have in your life?
Job.
You have a job. Okay? And so in that job, you're all going to have jobs after you leave here sometime, hopefully. Even if you have $1 billion. And what are you supposed to do with that? do the best thing you can. You're supposed to invest in it. You're supposed to give your I was going to say your mind, your heart, your soul. That sounds a bit too much, doesn't it? Yeah. Give your life for your job. No, but you're supposed to take what you have and make that job and the people there and the atmosphere there the best that it can be, as far as you can do. Anybody want to have a family? Should we get married and just leave everybody to do their own thing? Yeah, I hear. Now, you probably want to invest something, don't you? You probably want to invest the best of you into those relationships. I love when people have kids and they've suddenly become, just kind of whacked out. Like, oh, goo goo gaga, beep beep. But, something good about that. That's I just want to impart my heart to you. It's great. So wherever you are, you want to invest in that, don't you? Yes. Answer is yes. Okay, I want you to write down right now what there is, what is in your life, and how God wants you to invest in that. Laura, do you just want to come on up and play a little bit? I'm just going to spend a bit of time. And, what is the work that God has for you to do right here, right now? Cleaning the kitchen. Amen. By the way, just as we're on this topic, you realize that Christians should be the best environmentalists ever, right? If we're to steward the world, if the world matters, then we need to think about that. We should be better than everybody else. Although, obviously, some people take that cause as it is their God. And that's not where we want to be. So, Father, will you just poke us right now? Just poke us about where we are, what we have. What do we have in our hands that you want stewarded? What are the activities? What are the gifts that we have? What are the opportunities? What are the people? How do we carry out your work in the middle of these things? How do we further your work, your divine work? Lord, we want to be in that place where your fingerprints are everywhere. We want to put your fingerprints on everything that you've given us to handle. And Lord, in the places where we've just not seen some of these things as being valuable, that you move us to make them valuable.